when that first mistake happens, because there will be a crossing situation where he gets a little over aggressive and they concede a goal, that there isn't a backlash and says, oh, just stay on your line, because that would just defeat the purpose of him and what he does.
Matt Pyzdrowski, goalkeeping analyst for The Athletic. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on. I want to keep it really simple. I want to talk about Senne Lammens. What do you like about him?
Yeah, there's a lot to like about this guy. I mean, I think the first thing is like you look at the profile, right? You know, it's been a while since United's had kind of a young up and coming goalkeeper. You really have to look back to kind of De Gea, you know, when but obviously De Gea was playing at a higher level than Lammens was when he came to United, and I think there was a lot of hype around him. And Lammens, I think the thing that's interesting about him is it's like he's been highly scouted, of course, you know, and been highly touted amongst a lot of clubs in Europe, but he's kind of come in a way out of nowhere, and I think in a big way that's helped him. You know, because he hasn't been so experienced. He's really been a number one for, you know, a calendar year, you know, the top flight in Belgium. You know, but I think like when you look at him and his age, I think in his size, I think it's like he's got a great goalkeeper frame. You know, and then obviously we'll dive into it, but the intangibles that he has are just, yeah, they're really, really exciting.
Well, it's only a very small sample size, but what difference do you see him making, or what difference has he made so far to United? Obviously, results have coincided. Is it a coincidence? And results have definitely improved since he's come in. And it's just, you don't want to fall into the lazy thing of going, oh, he's calm, so he's made everybody calmer. But from an outsider's point of view, has it looked that way?
I mean, I think part of it is timing. I think part of it is a coincidence. But at the same time, I do think it's his profile. You know, I was discussing this with Carl Anka from The Athletic recently. I said like he's naive, but in the best possible way. You know, I think that he hasn't been a you know, an established starter for several years and kind of been put through the ringer. I think that helps him. You know, I think he's come in with like a really fresh attitude. There haven't been a ton of expectations put on him, which I think helps. You know, and also I think part of it is just I think it's the optics of it too, right? You know, people were very disappointed with Onana. You know, and I think it was just a breath of fresh air for a lot of fans. You know, and then obviously, like we talked about, it helps that, you know, he's performing and the club's performing right now. You know, and I think the interesting thing will be, yeah, the longer sample size throughout the year and then throughout years, you know, kind of how he develops, you know, because that will obviously be the test if he's able to have a long United career or not.
As a goalkeeping analyst, how would you categorize him? What type of goalkeeper would you put him as?
I mean, he's very much a modern goalkeeper because if you look in the way he kind of has all the intangibles, right? Like he's an incredible shot stopper, really good in the air, so he dominates his box. Very comfortable off his line. He has no problem playing the sweeper keeper role. You know, and he is pretty good with his feet. I know we haven't seen it a lot in United, and I think part of it's just a stylistic change that the manager's made. You know, especially if you look at the Liverpool game, I think he played 46 passes or something, and 44 of them were long.
Yeah.
So it's just like I think it's just a decision that's been made from the club. So you haven't maybe seen it so much. But like one of the things that I noticed when I was scouting him is like he's two-footed. He's really good with his right foot. He's really good with his left foot. Very comfortable playing short, medium, and the long range passes. You know, I think the thing that will be interesting is once things kind of settle at United, and then to kind of see if maybe they try to build things up again. You know, like they attempted with Onana, you know, and unfortunately it just didn't work out. You know, and kind of see how obviously not just him, but the team handles that. You know, once they're actually playing a more, I guess you could say, attractive brand of football again. You know, I think that's also what's helped them is I think, you know, obviously it was conscious, but I mean, I think the manager to say that because he's always been steadfast in the system that he wants to play. He's been very vocal, but like if you actually look at the last couple games that they've been playing, they've played much more direct. They're playing much more simple football. You know, and really taking the chances in the offensive half of the field instead of the defensive half of the field. You know, and I think that's has suited Lammens, has made the job a lot easier for him. And I think the transition was really smart too, you know, because when they brought him in, he was on the bench for a couple of games.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Manchester City Derby when he was brought in, and there was the whole talk around, is he going to be thrust into the lineup? And I think it was very smart that they didn't put him in.
Yeah.
Just to put a brand new goalkeeper, a young goalkeeper into that situation, it's risky, and I think giving him time to acclimate to the culture in United and just a new country and a new way of playing has been very, very smart. And I would like to think that that was conscious of the club. So yeah, I think it's obviously helped with the transition for him.
I fully agree with that. That's exactly the way that I would have done it. I mean, I think everybody was desperate to see him sooner, but
Yeah.
having those 2 or 3 games on the bench to watch and learn, how useful do you think they could have been for him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think also just for his sake, even though obviously he's an ambitious guy, there's a reason he wanted to go to United. He's been very vocal that he knows he can handle the pressure and the standards of United. So obviously, I know he would have been chopping at the bit. Myself being a old goalkeeper and how I was, I know obviously he would have wanted to play and he would have said it's no problem to put me in right away. But I think for the club, just to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and kind of relieve some of that pressure from him was very important. And I think just for him to be able to come in and train and focus on getting, obviously he's been fit, but getting into the rhythm of things and the way that things work, I think that's like we were talking about. It's very, very smart. And obviously for him to just be able to go in on the game day and kind of yeah, take in the whole atmosphere and how it is to be in United. How is the process and the pre-game talk? How is it to actually go out in the warm-up? How is it actually to step out onto Old Trafford? And all those things I think play a really big role, and I think it builds the anticipation for him as well. So it's like you have a dog who wants to go out there and wants to wants to get out and chomping at the bit, and then you just pull the leash back a little bit and say, okay, relax, buddy. You're going to get your chance. We believe in you, but your time will come. You just have to be a little patient, and I think that kind of probably helped him because I know obviously when he got his chance, against Sunderland, he was ready.
You mentioned Andre Nana a couple of times. Obviously, it would be remiss to not address that issue. From your perspective, being slightly withdrawn, how would you assess the kind of succession plan that United went through after De Gea? Because obviously he came in immediately, he was first choice to replace Edwin van der Sar. He was there for since 2011.
Yeah.
And he was there for such a long time. He was such a unique talent in goalkeeping because I'm lucky enough or old enough or both to have seen Schmeichel, Van der Sar, and De Gea, and I would put De Gea as by far the best shot stopper. Even though
Mm.
the other guys were very, very good, but he was ridiculous at shot stopping. But maybe to the point where he was too happy to face shots. So that's a very specific type of goalkeeper to replace. Andre Onana was a very different profile. So
Yep.
in terms of the overall process, how would you summarize it?
I mean, I remember writing about it after before even there was a rumor that Onana would go to United, but just remember watching the Champions League final and being blown away by Onana and already knew that United was going to be moving on from De Gea. And I just wrote a piece and I said, like, he would actually be the perfect fit for United in the way that they say that they want to play.
Right,
Um, and obviously things didn't work out that way, but I think on paper it was a good fit. I think it's very hard to think that it wouldn't have been a good fit. He had played for really big clubs, been experienced in the Champions League. Obviously, he went through some difficulties for a period and being suspended and then coming back. But I just think like if you looked at his skill sets on paper, it was the right fit. And I think it's just like it's a very good example that sometimes the right player can be the wrong fit for that club at a specific time.
right,
And I would still think that if United maybe was a little more stable in where they were, that it probably would have worked out. And then just unfortunately for Onana, he's a rash individual as well. He's had some bust ups with previous coaches, especially with the national team. And I think he's the type of person who just yeah, when it's a storm around him, he's not the one who's going to calm it. And I think obviously with hindsight now, you can look back and say, okay, maybe it wasn't the perfect fit, but when you look from a goalkeeper skill set, he was good. And I
yeah.
think a lot of people who say that he's a crap goalkeeper or that he was never good and everything else, it's just Yeah, it's BS. And I think, he's doing well now in Turkey, and obviously it's a step down from United. But I think it was just like now moving on. Obviously, it was the right decision, again. I think the thing that's a little ironic is it's like United's been through this whole process and saying that they wanted to play, with a goalkeeper who's better with the ball at his feet and more modern maybe than De Gea was, but now De Gea is doing an exceptional job, and there were even a section of the fan base that wanted him back,
Yeah,
and I think part of the thing with De Gea, what he suffered from is he suffered from his own standard. So like he had set the standard so high, and he was the best goalkeeper in the world for a 3 or 4 year period, and by far United's best player.
yeah,
And then obviously when there's a little bit of a dip, it looks more extreme, and then that dip also coincided with a lot of turbulence at the club. And obviously I think that played in a role. And I think it was definitely one of those situations where it's like you don't know what you got until it's gone.
yeah,
Uh, but at the same time, I think it made sense at the time to move on because that's what
yeah,
United said they wanted to do. They wanted to be more forward thinking, I guess you could say, and be a little more modern in the way that they wanted to play. And not now we're back with, I think someone like Lammens, I think he's a hybrid between the two. He's not as rash and maybe not as extreme in his play as Onana, but he's not as conservative as De Gea was either. He's a little bit in between. And I think that's a thing that like it's always hard when you scout goalkeepers because there's so much psychological as well that like plays into how it fits in the team. And there's just certain personalities that can handle it or have a more difficult time handling it. But it's like there's a lot to like about this kid. I mean, like he has a good presence. He likes to talk a lot. He likes to scream, but he's not like I don't know if you remember during Onana's preseason where he went into Maguire and like really
yeah,
chewed his head off in the preseason. And I think that's not something that Lamens will do.
no,
He will yell, but he will also be the one to pat someone on the back and say, "All right, come on, do it better next time."
mhm,
Um, and I think that balance there I'm hoping will help him, in the long run, and then the key is for United to get the pieces around him, correct,
yeah,
because they do have a very good young goalkeeper here, and I don't want to blow him up that he's going to be the next big thing because we really don't know because there's so much that needs to fall in place for that to happen. But he's talented. He's good.
yeah. I mean, to go back to a couple of words or a few words that came up there, talking about United and the situation, it's turbulence and storm you used. Whereas describing Senna, it's calm and sort of middle of the road type character. It's a welcome shift, isn't it? It's
Mm.
because if someone's bringing calm, at least one person bringing calm, then it can transmit, can't it? As a defense, if you don't trust your goalkeeper, if you're not calm around your goalkeeper, you can't focus on your own job, can you?
Sure. Totally. I think the goalkeeper's personality and aura feeds to the rest of the team. And if you have someone at the back who just, yeah, like you said, has a calm presence, but just gives security. I think security is the big word.
Yeah.
And it's like that everyone just trusts the keeper in goal. That does a huge thing because it's like even if they make a mistake, because they will, because all keepers make mistakes. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Allison or any of the greats who were in United with Van der Sar and Schmeichel and even De Gea in his prime, like we were talking about. There's just an idea that if a mistake happens, up, whatever, out with the chest, throw the ball up to the half field, and it will never happen again. And I think that will be the challenge for someone like Lamens to keep up, because there will be a period again here. I know United fans won't like to hear it, but there will be a period where they will struggle again,
Yeah.
and it's just because it happens. You look at the big club. I mean, look at Liverpool right now. Liverpool's trying to figure it out, and everyone thought going into the season that they would run over the Premier League this year. Um, so it's inevitable that'll happen, and it'll just be interesting to see kind of how he handles it. And I think I think he's the right personality for it. It just seems like he is. I
Yeah.
think the big thing, like we talked about that security, like the big example, right, is that he goes out and he catches crosses. I mean, like that's something
Been
that
a
United's
while.
been missing. Yeah, missing since Van der Sar left.
Yeah.
because De Gea was a line goalkeeper, like to stay on his line and, like you said, just rely on his shot stopping ability. Onana on paper was someone who would go off, but like he just never exuded confidence.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously you look back, Van der Sar and Schmeichel was great at it too, and I think that's one thing about Lammens, and one thing that I hope doesn't happen because one thing I noticed when I scouted him is that like he will come. Like he will come and sometimes the timing will be a bit off and it'll look a bit awkward and strange. But that's part of the process, and I
Yeah.
think when that first mistake happens, because there will be a crossing situation where he gets a little over aggressive and they concede a goal, that there isn't a backlash and says, "Oh, just stay on your line," because that would just defeat the purpose of him and what he
Correct.
does.
Yeah.
So I hope people have patience, and especially because he is young. Like we said, we're talking about a 23-year-old. Um, and if the club and the fans and everyone have patience, like he could be the next goalkeeper for 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that yeah, it's exciting.
Brilliant. I fully agree. Fully agree. I think we've got the guy, but it's as you say, all about keeping calm and giving him time and letting him learn on the job, make mistakes, and so on.
Yep.
There's not a lot of that around, but I do feel like the air is just changing a little bit to give him a bit more of the right environment in which to, like I say, learn on the job.
Yeah, and I think one thing that plays into it, which I think can be a problem, not a problem, but maybe something that clubs forget sometimes is like the personality of the person actually plays a role in if whether they'll fit in or not. And he just seems like he's the right personality. He just seems
Yeah.
like he's a likable guy. Like I remember the first interview, like you sat there. I remember sitting there watching it on my phone and just like this guy's a likable dude. Like you want him to succeed. And
Yeah.
I think that's overlooked. I think there are too many clubs that just look at, I mean, even myself when I was saying that Onana would be a good fit, on paper, with the stats wise. I think it's something that we forget sometimes that like actually that a goalkeeper is going to be in goal that people like and his teammates like plays a huge role.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant. Matt, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
great. Thanks for having me.